let's be honest. Human beings are weird. We spend a few good amount of years telling stories about foxes, depressed horses, emotionally damaged cats, crime-solving rabbits, and whatever the hell was happening in half of the Saturday morning cartoons. And somehow, this works. Not only does it works so well that some of the most emotionally devastating stories ever written feature characters that technically belong in a petting zoo. Think about that for a second. Somebody can make an entire audience cry over the emotional collapse of a horse. Not a person, a horse. A horse that wears sweaters and is a raging alcoholic.
Can we please get some alcohol into my mouth?
And yet, somehow, that's one of the most effective storytelling tools ever invented. Which raises a pretty obvious question. Why? Why do humans keep turning animals into people? And more importantly, why are we so willing to listen when they do? The answer actually goes back a lot further than most people realize. Way before television and movies, and especially way before video games. Some of the oldest stories ever told used animals as a stand-in for people. Take the ancient fables attributed to... How do you say that?
Aesop.
Aesop. You know the ones. The tortoise and the hare, the fox and the grapes, the lion and the mouse. Stories that basically boil down to, here's an animal doing something stupid, don't be like that animal. It's simple and effective. No PowerPoint presentation required. The genius of these stories was they could talk about human behavior without directly talking about humans. If a story says people can be arrogant, somebody might get defensive. But if a story says this rabbit was an idiot and lost the race because he wouldn't stop showing off, everyone nods and goes, wow, what a foolish rabbit. Meanwhile, the lesson sneaks into your brain through the back door. It's basically educational smuggling, and storytellers have been exploiting this loophole for centuries. Because anthropomorphism, that's the fancy word for giving humans traits to animals, create a weird kind of distance. The audience feels safe. They're not looking at themselves directly. They're looking at a wolf, or a fox, or a bear, or whatever animal the writer decided to have a mental breakdown that day. That distance makes difficult subjects easier to approach. It's why so many stories aimed at children use animal characters. Topics like death, discrimination, and morality suddenly become much more easier to discuss when the characters have tails. Nobody knows why this works. It just does. Humans see a cartoon rabbit dealing with existential dread and immediately think,
finally, someone who gets it!
The weirdest part is that as storytelling evolved, anthropomorphic characters didn't disappear, they got more complicated. At some point, writers realized they could use animal characters for stories that were absolutely not meant for children. Enter the modern media. Take BoJack Horseman, for example. A show that tricks you into thinking you're about to watch a goofy comedy about animal celebrities, and then suddenly you're having an existential crisis at 2 a.m. Because underneath all the animal jokes is a brutal exploration of depression, addiction, self-destruction, and trauma. The main character is literally a horse, yet somehow he feels more human than half of the protagonists in live-action television, which is honestly impressive and deeply concerning. Another example of this would be the video game Night in the Woods, a game where everyone is an animal, cats, foxes, crocodiles, and birds even. And despite looking like something you'd find on a teenager sticker collection, it's actually one of the most honest portrayals of depression, anxiety, economic decline, and growing up that gaming has ever produced. The game talks about topics that would feel painfully heavy in a realistic setting. But because the characters are cartoon animals, the audiences lower their guard. And that's where the magic happens. The message gets through. It's the storytelling equivalent of hiding vegetables in a cheeseburger. You came for one thing, now you're accidentally learning life lessons. Look at Zootopia. On the surface, it's a buddy cop movie about a rabbit and a fox. Beneath that, it's tackling prejudice, stereotyping, systematic bias, and social division. Not bad for a movie where one of the main characters occasionally chases criminals while wearing a tiny police uniform. And that's the real power of anthropomorphism. It allows stories to discuss people without all the baggage that comes with actual people. The moment the story uses human characters, audiences bring up assumptions about them. Assumptions like politics, race, culture, class, and personal experiences. Animal characters create just enough separation from the audience to engage with difficult ideas more openly. It's not removing complexity, it's making complexity easier to digest. What's funny is that people can often dismiss anthropomorphic stories as childish, which is ironic because some of the most mature stories ever written use them. The talking animal is just a disguise, a Trojan horse if you will. It's a way of getting the audiences to engage with ideas they might otherwise avoid, because it's easier to confront uncomfortable truths when they're being delivered by a sarcastic cat instead of a philosopher professor. And honestly, that's probably why this technique has survived for thousands of years. Even if the technology changed, the art styles, or even the medium changed, the basic idea never did. Whether it's an ancient fable told around a campfire, a cartoon horse having an emotional breakdown, or a cat-shaped college dropout trying to figure out her place in the world, the goal is still the same. Because what it all comes down to is that anthropomorphism isn't really about animals, it's about people. And it always has been.
The game was rigged from the start.
The rabbit isn't a rabbit, and the horse definitely isn't just a horse. They're mirrors. Funny looking, occasionally traumatizing mirrors. And somehow, after all this time, we are still learning about ourselves by watching anthropomorphic characters talk.